A blessed day to all the organizers and participants of the Word Conference 2021, presented by the Claretian Publications. This year we celebrate 500 years of Christianity's arrival in the Philippines. And in light of the theme Gifted to Give for this year's quincentennial celebration, we have for this event a theme taken from Proverbs 18:16, which tells us, "A gift opens the way and ushers the giver into the presence of the great." What is interesting in this Bible verse is how this signifies the topic I'm going to discuss with you today. Early this year, I have had the privilege of releasing my first published book entitled The Role of Shrines in View of the New Evangelization, Pope Francis's Theology on Shrines and Pilgrimages Applied in the Philippine Context. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Claretian Publications for making me part of your family of authors. My personal aim in this book is to share to a wider audience, both to those managing the shrines and to the pilgrims who go to these shrines, that the Church teaches us on these holy sites of pilgrimage in light of the different documents that have been made and issued by the Church in recent years. In my talk today, I wish for us to look into some basic questions like, what is a shrine? What is pilgrimage? Why are these important to the faith? And why is a shrine a gift to the Church in a particular town or city or country? There are two elements in these questions, the pilgrimage and the shrine. Before we understand the shrine, we must first understand what is a pilgrimage. So I would like to ask you, have you ever been to a pilgrimage? Maybe yes, or maybe no. Going on a pilgrimage is going on a journey of discovering God in our lives. There are two challenges that face us whenever we think of going on a pilgrimage, which are important for us to discover what pilgrimage is all about. First, a pilgrimage is a reflection of our journey in this world. From the point of eschatology, or the last things, heaven, hell, purgatory, and judgment, our lives are seen as a journey. Our choices in life, whether good or bad, bring us to a path either to God or to evil. A pilgrimage allows us to remember what proper path we should take, what way we should follow, and whose guidance we should seek. Of course, none other than God's. A pilgrimage is a universal religious experience of finding God in one's journey of life. And that experience can only be possible if one goes to an important place, to a sacred place. That is why, for example, the Muslims have Mecca, why the Buddhists have Bodh Gaya. For us Catholics, we have the Holy Sepulchre of Christ in Jerusalem, the Vatican, built on St. Peter's tomb, Lourdes, where the Virgin Mary appeared to Bernadette Soubirous in the 19th century. This gives us an understanding of the relationship of the pilgrimage and the shrine. Pilgrims need shrines, and shrines need pilgrims. This brings us to the second challenge of pilgrimage. If you have ever experienced being on a pilgrimage, what do you usually do? What is your motivation of going to a pilgrimage? For example, you attended the Lenten Visita Iglesia, or if you have visited a place abroad, like the Holy Land or in Rome. One reason could be is that the experience of being to a famous place, a sought-after destination, would be the aim of your visit. But let us remember, a pilgrimage is not a tour. Pope Paul VI in 1970 first called the commission established for shrines as the Pontifical Commission for Migrants and Tourism. So during its early years, pilgrimage has been connected to terms such as pious tourism or religious tourism. But in time, the term tourism was less used. Actually, it is now removed because it leads us away from understanding what pilgrimage is really about. A pilgrimage is not about seeing famous places. It is about going to a place where we experience the presence of God. By looking into the act of pilgrimage, when Catholics started to visit the Holy Land, for example, you visit the place because it invites a person to pray and to reflect. Because of this, one's prayer life somehow deepens as he or she experiences being in a journey or coming into a shrine. And so this differentiates a mere tourist going to a certain sought after destination from a pilgrim who goes on a journey to a sacred place. The tourist goes to an attraction for leisurely pleasure, like going to a museum or a park or to take pictures. But the pilgrim is more than just a spectator. A pilgrim is more than a tourist. A pilgrim is someone who comes to a shrine bringing with him or her their problems, their worries, their doubts and fears. While bringing these things, the pilgrim opens his or her heart to God in prayer, even going far as to doing fasting or giving alms. A pilgrimage is meant for the pilgrim to find renewal and rediscovery in their faith. If we're going to look into the history of the church, pilgrimage and shrines are already there for the past centuries. When Emperor Constantine ordered the acceptance of Christianity as a religion in the Roman Empire in 317 AD, his mother, Saint Helena, helped in establishing churches in important places connected to Christ, like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, Capernaum, among many others. Even during the Middle Ages, the situation heightened as many more pilgrimage sites became available for believers. More famous shrines were founded, like the House of Mary in Loreto, the resting place of St. James in Santiago de Compostela, and Rome itself became a pilgrimage site composed of many shrines and basilicas. What is common among the people going to these places was that every one of them had a repentant heart. That is why the pilgrimage has a penitential character. A person goes to a pilgrimage not because he or she is already holy or righteous, but because they have sinned somehow in the past and wish to become holy. That is why a pilgrim goes to a shrine which is a sacred place. One of the proofs that pilgrimage should be penitential is what a pilgrim receives when he or she arrives at a shrine. In the year 1216, Saint Francis of Assisi once approached Pope Honorius III to request that a papal grant be given to the little church of Porciuncula that he himself built, which was dedicated to Our Lady of the Angels. With that papal blessing, anyone who will go to that shrine will receive a full remission of punishment for sins that they have confessed or repented for. This is what we know now as indulgence. Because of this, any pilgrim who goes to a shrine in pilgrimage is able to receive the indulgence when one performs the basic requirements: going to confession, to receive communion at Mass sometime before, during, or after your visit to a shrine, and of course, to say a prayer in honor of the Pope. Now, for understanding what the status of a shrine is all about, we should try to understand what the Church teaches further about these places. For those who know about canon law, we remember that the 1983 Code of Canon Law contains provisions on shrines, which are part of the foundation of the Church teaching concerning these places. In Book 4, Part 3, Title 1, Chapter 3 of the Code, they are Canons 1230 to 1234. Before we look into these 5 provisions, let us first discuss what should a shrine look like. What is important in a shrine is that it is a sacred place. Canon 1205, a sacred place is defined as something designated for divine worship by a dedication or by blessings prescribed by the liturgy. It means it could be a parish church, it could be a chapel, it could even be a cave, as long as it is suitable for the worship of pilgrims. However, in the Canon 1230, it makes us more specific instruction. People should be accommodated in the shrine, and it should be declared by a proper ecclesiastical authority. Seeing these two provisions, there are two aspects for a church to be called a shrine: the liturgical and the canonical. That is why there are two events that must take place to call a shrine. The canonical, which is the reading of a decree by the bishop if it is a diocesan shrine, by the bishop's conference if it is a national shrine, and by the Holy See if it is an international shrine. And the liturgical, which is the celebration of the Mass in the shrine when the title is declared, otherwise known as solemn declaration. The next canons, 1231 to 1232, mention that each shrine should be declared by a decree, mentioning if it is diocesan, national, or international. It also tells us that each shrine should have a set of statutes, so that the place may be governed according to the norms of the Church. This is also part of the canonical aspect of declaring a shrine. Now, in Canons 1233 and 1234, on the other hand, they reveal what we call the liturgical aspect. Canon 1234 states that in shrines, the means of salvation are to be supplied more abundantly to the faithful. This is why shrines should have what we call a suitable promotion of the liturgical life, which is possible through the ardent proclamation of the Word of God, to frequent celebrations of the Eucharist and penance, and through celebrating the approved forms of popular piety. It means shrines should have priests providing the best homilies or reflections on Scripture. It means the shrine should have the most number of masses in the diocese. And it means it should have the most regular of schedules of confession, and that there is a special devotion being fostered in a shrine. Canon 1234, although liturgical, also reflects another aspect, which is the cultural. This canon states that there should be votive offerings of popular art and piety that are being kept on display on shrines. It is for this reason that shrines are tasked to have facilities for these cultural treasures. There should be museums, archives, libraries, and oratories, where pieces of art, like clothes, vestments, paintings, statues, or images, may be given to the shrine through the years, which are to be kept and preserved. These provisions of the Code of Canon Law are considered the foundation of the understanding on shrines, especially in the modern world. However, with the years that passed by, there have also been other documents produced by the Church through its teaching authority or the Magisterial, which led her to improve the pastoral situation of shrines today. There are 4 pastoral documents produced in 3 decades since the 1983 Code of Canon Law. In 1989, the Congregation of Divine Worship and Discipline of the Sacraments issued the document Domus Ecclesiae, or the norms granting the title of a minor basilica. Minor basilicas historically were the first shrines due to their antiquity and historical importance. That is why important churches of the Catholic Church are often declared basilicas, such as the 4 major basilicas in Rome: St. John Lateran, St. Peter's in the Vatican, St. Paul outside the walls, and St. Mary Major. However, there are also churches that have gained importance to other communities, both in Rome and in other places or countries, to which the title minor basilicas are given. Apart from the cathedrals, which are the mother churches of any diocese, the minor basilicas are second in rank among the churches in the diocese. That is why they are called papal churches. They are followed by a parish church and then by an oratory as dedicated churches, apart from the churches that we now call shrines. However, by practice, these basilicas are of course still considered as shrines because they are able to grant the grace of indulgence, especially during celebrations in honor of Saints Peter and Paul. Because of this, the minor basilica has the following duties. In a minor basilica, the liturgical instruction of the faithful is to be promoted by establishing groups concerned with liturgical activity. It should have the best choir, the best group of altar servers, or one of the best liturgical commissions. The celebrations of the liturgical year are supposed to be carried out in a basilica with great care, especially in important seasons such as Advent, Christmas, Lent, and Easter. Since the celebration of the liturgy takes on a more noble form when it is carried out in song, care must also be taken in basilicas as songs, especially in the Latin, are sung during Masses. That is why each basilica should have a schola cantorum, or a choir that sings songs in Latin. Also, to make clear the particular bond of communion between a minor basilica and the chair of St. Peter, there should be special celebrations in honor of the Apostle of Rome celebrated with particular care every year. These are the Feast of the Chair of St. Peter every February 22, the Solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul every June 29, and the anniversary of the Supreme Pontiff's election or inauguration into the Supreme Ministry held today on March 19 because of Pope Francis. The second document was made a decade later, in 1999, when the Commission on Migrants became the Pontifical Council on the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People. The document produced was called The Shrine, Memory, Presence, and Prophecy of the Living God. This presented that each shrine should have three arches: memory, presence, and prophecy. The church is called a place of memory because it is the dwelling place of God. With the many statues, works of visual art, and historical items of immense value, the shrine becomes a storage place of the memory of the people's devotion to God and to a particular patron saint. The shrine is also called a place of God's presence because we could remember here is celebrated with the most good quality, the Word of God, sacraments, and Christian unity in prayer. That is why there should be frequent celebrations. That is why there should be the best homilies in this place. And that is why the shrine should also be in the forefront of activities connected to ecumenism in the spirit of Christian prayer. The shrine is then also called a place of prophecy because the shrine is the ultimate sign of our goal in life, that is, to journey towards God, and that every pilgrimage in history is a reflection of that journey. Another document that was made in 1999 was the fourth edition of the Manual of Indulgences. This tells us when indulgences can be received in a shrine or a minor basilica. This is important because usually people think that when a shrine is declared a shrine, you can go anytime and that you will receive an indulgence anytime. Actually, you can only receive indulgence in a shrine in the following dates. In a minor basilica, you can only receive the indulgence when you attend Mass during the Solemnity of Saints Peter and Paul, when it is the solemnity of the titular patron of the basilica, every August 2, during the anniversary of the Porciuncula Indulgence of St. Francis, and once a year on a day chosen by the community of faith. Then, for a shrine, whether it be international, national, or archdiocesan and diocesan, the indulgence can only be celebrated during the Feast of the Saint, once a year on a day chosen by the Christian faithful, and as long as there are pilgrims who visit the shrine as a group. Now, there is a special case that we have for this year, that is we call the Jubilee Churches. When there is a Jubilee year, for example, the Great Jubilee Year 2000, the Extraordinary Jubilee of Mercy, or the anniversary of a diocese or of a country, a decree from the Apostolic Penitentiary, which is the Vatican department in charge of indulgences, prescribes that an indulgence is available in a shrine every day only for a declared period of time. So for example, during these 500 years of Christianity in the Philippines, the Jubilee churches can grant indulgences to any pilgrim who visits the shrine between April 4, 2021 to April 22, 2022. So it is a specific amount of time. The fourth document is the Directory of Popular Piety and the Liturgy in 2021. This is one of the important documents because it tells us the different dimensions wherein a devotion in a shrine improves the spiritual life of a pilgrim. For example, here in the Philippines, we remember that there are many devotions in many shrines. We have the Nazareno in Quiapo, the Santo Niño in Cebu, Our Lady of Antipolo, Our Lady of Manawag, Padre Pio, and so on and so forth, reaching to a number of 258 shrines across the Philippines. Now, these shrines provide 6 dimensions of spirituality, which every pilgrim is able to experience when you are in a shrine. Eschatological, because the shrine should be a vision of the clarity of heaven. Penitential, because every pilgrimage should lead to a pilgrim's experience of the mercy of God. Festive, because the joy of pilgrimage is the joy of entering the New Jerusalem. Worship, because every experience in the shrine is an experience of thanking or praying to God, with the Holy Mass as the most important because it is the source and summit of Christian life. Apostolic, because when a pilgrim experiences God's mercy in the encounter at the shrine, it leads a pilgrim to open his or her heart to others, thus becoming apostles of charity. And lastly, communal, because the journey of faith is not something a pilgrim does alone, but because the Christian family is made of pilgrims who together walk the same journey to Jesus. Now we come to the latest document made by our present pontiff, Pope Francis, in 2017. It is entitled Sanctuarium in Ecclesia, or the Shrine Inside the Church. One of the important aspects of the Pope in making this document is that it is motu proprio, which means he did not need to be consulted and acted on his own wisdom in making this document. It was even issued on February 11, the memorial of Our Lady of Lourdes, which we now know is one of the most famous shrines in the world. What Pope Francis directed us in what our shrine should be is that our shrines are venues, even powerhouses of the new evangelization. When we say powerhouse, it is the storage place of all the energy that we have, and it is distributed to each home. That is why when you go into a shrine, you are recharged like a battery. And that every time you go home, you are charged with that faith coming from that sacred place. He reminds us that shrines should be in this modern day and age accomplished through 5 basic challenges. First, the shrine is a sign of faith. As Pope Francis tells us, shrines remain to this day a distinctive sign of the simple and humble faith of believers. That is why we are recharged when we go into a shrine. And every time we go home from our pilgrimage, we share that energy of faith, that light of faith to other people. Second, a shrine is a place of rest, silence, and contemplation. We live in a busy world, full of distractions, noise, pollution, and violence. Shrines offer us a genuine experience of prayer, like resting in the silence of God. That is why it is important for us to have different places of prayer in a shrine, like the Adoration Chapel, Chapel of the Saints, and places where candles are offered, like prayers rising to God in heaven. Third is that a shrine is a place of the liturgy. In a shrine, the sacraments of Eucharist and of confession are essential, and that celebrations are not only held frequently, Now we have the internet and social media that makes access to programs of a shrine more available to people in the digital age. Fourth, the shrine is a venue for catechesis. That is why each shrine should have a ministry in charge of guiding pilgrims in a shrine, and that facilities, for example, a conference hall, an office, a museum, or an oratory are available when orienting or communicating to pilgrims, telling us what the story of a shrine is and why is this shrine important in our community. Fifth and lastly, the shrine is also an abode of charity. It is a place where doors are open for the poor, for the sick, for migrants, and for refugees. No poor person should be denied when going to a shrine, because this is the fruit of a pilgrimage, a faith that works through love. Because of the pilgrimage, a pilgrim's heart is now ready to the needs of his brothers and sisters. All of these aspects of a shrine allow us to understand the last question of our talk. Yes, a shrine is a gift we have received because we realize that in a shrine, we have a home, we have a center of the Christian community. And so each shrine is a gift because there are sacred places wherein the liturgy and proclamation of the word are held that are recognized because of a unique devotion that promotes spirituality by becoming a means of evangelization. They become venues for the frequent celebration of the Mass and of confession, for the reception of indulgence, for devotional prayers and liturgical and doctrinal catechesis, for the fostering of spiritual ecumenism through prayer, for expressing its vitality through service and Christian charity, and with the capacity to provide instruments of beauty and culture that engage pilgrims to appreciate an ongoing tradition of devotion leading to a better experience of ecclesial communion. In the end, our shrines are guideposts. They are signs in this journey of our life towards God. Whenever we visit a shrine, we come to an encounter with the divine that makes us remember an essential part of our existence, that we are children of God. And so I hope that through these few words on the teaching of the Church on shrines and pilgrimages, we may be inspired and be joyful for this grace. Like what the psalmist in Psalm 121 tells us, I rejoiced when I heard them say, let us go to the house of God. Thank you very much and a blessed day to all of you.